back. Good morning. Welcome to the first Sunday supplement of the new season. Coming up on today's show, Manchester United, they prepare to make their mark. They're spending a world record £80 million on a defender. They're signing Harry Maguire from Leicester City. It's all changed at Chelsea again. Frank Lampard, he's taking charge of his first game at Chelsea next weekend. They travel to United on Sunday. And Pep, he insists the Premier League is the priority. The defending champions gear up for the Community Shield this afternoon against the European champions Liverpool. That's at Wembley Stadium later on. 3 champions with us this morning. Regulars on this programme, of course. Oliver Holt is the chief sports writer at the Mail on Sunday. Melissa Reddy, big transfer herself this summer. She's the football correspondent at ESPN. And Henry Winter is the chief football writer at The Times. Morning. Morning all. Did you have a good summer? Good to see you.
Very good, Neil. Yeah.
Busy for you, Women's World Cup down in the south of France?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed covering that as much as I've enjoyed covering anything for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
It was a terrific tournament, great access, good tournament for us, semi-final. So, yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah, good. And good move for you as well, Melissa. I don't know which is the bigger move this summer, Harry Maguire from Leicester City to Manchester United, or Melissa Reddy, joe.co.uk to ESPN.
I'd love some of Harry Maguire's soon-to-be wages, I tell you that. But yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Did you guys enjoy your summer? Did the season ever end? Yeah. I don't think it did.
Did the season ever end? It starts today, for real, in the Community Shield. Henry, you'll be there.
I think it started yesterday or on Friday with the EFL. I mean, that first Luton game certainly got the season going. No, Melissa's right. I mean, the season never stops. I went to the under-21. Solly obviously got the Women's World Cup gig, and that, I mean, I watched that from afar, and it was fantastic, that run to the semi-finals. Yeah. And it's very interesting talking to people at the Football Association. You can see that Phil Neville is being nurtured for the top job.
For the big job.
Absolutely. You know, they see. Look, it'd be great if he goes and wins a trophy maybe at the Euros with the women, but I think that was a very significant step for him. Though.
Yeah, absolutely was. Okay, good to hear. You've all had football-inspired summers and busy football summers as well. Don't forget to tweet the show, of course, at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. We'll tuck into some of the subjects that are on the back pages of the papers this morning. Ball hasn't even been kicked yet. Sunday Mirror, back of the Sunday Mirror this morning. No respect, no control at Manchester United. Their first game next weekend, of course, against Chelsea at Old Trafford. This is Paul Ince laying into his former club this morning. That's on the back of the Sunday Mirror. At the start, this is Graham Souness, this time Monster Crunch. He says the pair are part of the problem at Manchester United. This is Paul Pogba and Romelu Lukaku. We think both want out of Manchester United. Are they about to make some more changes, though? Manchester United wanting Dybala and Mandzukic from Juventus in a swap deal for Lukaku. This is Duncan Castle's front page of the Sunday Times sports section this morning. Henry's just mentioned the action over the weekend in the EFL Friday night and then into Saturday. Poor starts for 2 of the favourites in the Championship, relegated last season. Fulham and Cardiff both beaten yesterday. Back to reality. That's the front. The goals put out in the Sun this morning. There is a game this afternoon, of course, Community Shield. We'll talk about Liverpool's success in the Champions League a little bit later. But Black Friday, Jurgen Klopp not happy that the Premier League season starts on Friday. Of course, they play newly promoted Norwich, that game on Friday night. Klopp says his team won't have had enough time to prepare for the game. It's the Clash of the Titans this afternoon. That's the Express's take on events at the Community Shield. And the pot shot Guardiola telling Klopp, this is the trophy you really wanted. Pep Guardiola talking about the Premier League. That's the trophy that he covets more than any other, including the Champions League. We'll get on to Liverpool and Manchester City in part 5 of today's programme. But first up, Ollie, world record transfer fee Manchester United about to pay for a defender. This is Harry Maguire, £80 million. Let's start with the obvious question. Is he worth it?
Well, I think he is worth it in that Manchester United desperately need a player like him, and the figures are, you know, what's he going to be? Van Dijk, 75 million. I mean, Van Dijk's been an incredible success for Liverpool. I'm not sure that Maguire's Van Dijk, but I think he's a very, very good player. And
we didn't know Van Dijk was Van Dijk before he became Van Dijk.
Well, some people say that they did, but I mean, but I think that he's absolutely what Manchester United need, and I think the problem that United have is that because they're not in the Champions League, because they have an executive vice chairman who everybody else thinks is a soft touch in the league, then they are kind of paying way over the odds for players. They have to pay over the odds, and I think they've done that before, and they may be doing it again, but actually I don't think it really matters because he's what they need. I think the big thing for United this summer was to improve their defence, and with Wan-Bissaka, who you will know better than I, and now with Harry Maguire, they've done that. And I think with Victor Lindelof was one of their better players last season. I think their defence is, their defence is looking much improved. So I think I don't worry too much about the transfer fee. Manchester United have got plenty of money. I'd rather they spent it on Harry Maguire. I'm sure their fans would than servicing the Glazers' debt. So I think it's a good signing.
Yeah. Is he in the class of Van Dijk? Because Ollie's just made that comparison. It's a very obvious comparison. You've got this rock-solid central defender at Liverpool, one of the finest players in the Premier League. Klopp talking this morning in the papers about he may not have made the big signings this summer, but he's managed to keep his best players when everybody wants them. Everybody would love to have a Van Dijk in their side. Is Maguire in that category? Can we really place him in the top tier of central defenders in the world?
I think we're obviously going to judge him against Van Dijk because he's just surpassed him as the world's most expensive defender, so that's only natural, but I think it's unfair. One, because he's not even kicked a ball yet for Manchester United, so we don't know how he's going to transform them. We seem to forget that people were questioning that £75 million fee for Van Dijk. They were saying he's not worth it, it's too much, and he's proved that, if anything, it was actually quite cheap. With Maguire, it's also silly to compare him to Van Dijk because Van Dijk wasn't available to them. So they had to go for what they could actually get. Does he tick all the boxes of what they need? Aerially dominant. Leicester conceded the least goals from set pieces last season, primarily because of his ability in the air. Can construct attacks from the back, which is what Ole wants. Great. Composed character, personality, has all those kind of things in a dressing room that has been known to be a bit of a problem. He's not going to give you any of that. And I think how he's handled wanting to leave Leicester, there's been no bad briefs from him to the media, no kickoffs, no missing training or anything like that. I think he's handled it quite well, and United are getting the total package of a defender. Maybe the only question mark against him, he doesn't have a lot of recovery pace, but he's clever enough to read the game that he doesn't need that. What I think Van Dijk benefited from at Liverpool was a very solid structure. So he came in and he's obviously very good and was able to transform the team, but he had the platform to do that. Don't really think United are giving Maguire the same sort of platform.
Henry, you've seen a lot of Harry Maguire, haven't you, over the years? You're smiling, but
I think it's a great buy. I think it's, Melissa's articulated all the sort of, particularly the on-field contribution that Maguire will bring. He's a leader. He's a future Manchester United captain. Anyone who's interviewed him or spent any time around him knows this is a good character. We're always debating good characters, particularly around England, and the whole sort of Southgate ethos was going back to the sort of the All Black thing of having good characters as well as good players. And Maguire adds to that. I mean, all the points that Melissa made about defending and stepping into midfield, completely valid. Also, what he contributes goals as well. So he will be a threat for them up front. I think he's such a bubbly character. And as I say, we've all interviewed him. You come out of an interview with Harry Maguire thinking this is a really nice kid. England are in good hands. Leicester City are in good hands. I think what it also shows, I mean, everyone sort of discussed why it's taken so long. Leicester played hardball. I mean, this is the new reality of the Premier League now. You've got, inverted commas, a mid-table club like Leicester City, who I think will be pushing for the top six, and obviously in 2016 they won the title. But they've got the financial resources from broadcast and also from very wealthy owners. And they don't want to be pushed around. And I think they played hardball. They've got the money they wanted. Manchester United and Solskjaer would have liked him about 3 weeks ago to sort of bed in alongside Lindelof. But no, so I think it's a fantastic signing, and he'll bring a smile back to that dressing room. He'll lift players there because he's such an engaging character.
I think that's an important point actually, because I think there's been this kind of malaise at United for quite a long time now, and a sort of dissatisfaction in the dressing room. And all of us can see it. I remember when they beat PSG in Paris, and afterwards the players came through the mix zone. I mean, it was a brilliant night, one of the best nights, probably the best night of their season. players came through looking like they'd just lost 5-0. And I mean, there is this malaise and this attitude there that is, I don't know, that feels like a team that's besieged. And I think that for whatever reason that is, you know, whether it's a legacy of Mourinho, I don't know. But I think it's been like that for a while. And I think what Henry says about buying characters, it's an old thing. I mean, Ferguson always used to do it, buy the character as well as the player. I think gradually turning that thing around for United is going to be huge.
In terms of preparation, Melissa, the one thing that perhaps is concerning is how late all this business is being done. That, say, one of their predecessors, Ollie's just mentioned, Mourinho, would like to know his squad. First day of pre-season, wanted his squad in place. This is the squad that he's going to use for the season. Of course, he did that famously in his second spell at Chelsea when they won the title. He knew the squad that he wanted to work with. With Manchester United, OK, they brought in Aaron Wan-Bissaka at the start of the summer window, but they've yet to sign Maguire. They are about to. But possibly Dybala, Mandzukic coming in, Lukaku, and then the uncertainty continues over Paul Pogba too, even though Solskjaer said yesterday and was pretty emphatic about it, that Pogba wants to stay, or is going to stay.
It's very concerning. I think, you know, while everyone's talking about Maguire's fee and whether he's worth it, I don't think you can criticise United on that element, because they're buying the player, that's his valuation, they need him, and that's sorted. But they knew the valuation from the start of the window. To take so long to only agree the actual fee anyway, he's now missed out on pre-season and, you know, that helpful adjustment period with his squad before things kick off. The business with Dybala and Mandzukic as well, that's happening. It seems to be happening to them, not something they planned to happen. This wasn't part of their big vision for the window. It's transpired because Inter's bid was turned down for Lukaku. That's where he wanted to go. And now they're trying to work on a compromise. It seems to be a very good compromise. They don't want Lukaku. He doesn't suit them. These players sort of make more sense when you tally them against what Ole is saying his vision is. Still, though, it's concerning that it's this late and there's still so many question marks. With Pogba, he's come out quite emphatically, like you said, and said Pogba's staying. But Pogba actually doesn't want to be there. And he's not a player who doesn't want to be there and seems like the type to knuckle down, especially with his agent. So it seems like if he does stay, you're going to have this saga until January. And then if nothing happens in January, again through the summer, where, you know, talking about all the upheaval and the unhappiness and how he could be doing better elsewhere.
I think you're spot on. I think that's the real danger for United, that, OK, they make a couple of signings. I think Maguire is a very good signing. But I think this uncertainty around Pogba is one of those, as Melissa says, is one of those sagas that could just run and run. It could disrupt the start of the season. There's bound to be a flurry of activity in the next week, I imagine, about whether he'll, you know, we've already seen he didn't travel to Cardiff for that, you know, whether he'll stay, whether he'll go. I mean, if he goes, what kind of a hole does that leave?
Ollie leaves a huge hole.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly if you saw them yesterday, they're crying out for someone of Pogba. A Pogba without Raiola, a Pogba focused, a Pogba in love with Manchester United, and obviously, you know, we know his roots there. He's absolutely what they need. We saw it in the World Cup. We saw that talk he gave before the World Cup final when the French Federation released the footage afterwards. He's a fantastic player. How do you replace someone like him? I know there's a lot of nonsense that goes on around him, but actually, you know, you talk to people at Manchester United and actually say he's just really nice. You know, he's actually quite a sort of humble guy. But as I say, there's nonsense around him. If you've got a focused Pogba, it's always struck me from the start with Solskjaer. He's had a sort of Operation Pogba. Get Pogba smiling again. Get him focused. There was a key moment on the pitch. Well, there is, but
what? He has his haircut?
No, not that. Not that and emojis. No, I mean that's minor. I mean the media get, you know, excited about that, but that's nothing. No, it's clearly the agent. But you look at that. Just rewinding to the game against Spurs at Wembley. That partnership between him and Rashford. You know, and Ollie clearly wants to build around Rashford. That's why I find all the sort of Mandzukic stuff slightly strange. Dybala makes sense because he's a fantastic player and you play off him and create. But you know, you have to keep a player like Pogba, but keeping him happy is the key issue first.
Do they need to? Why did? If I look at the great Manchester United central midfielders of the past, though, Henry, did they have to keep Brian Robson happy? Did they have to keep Roy Keane happy? Did they have to keep Paul Ince happy? Is that how it works there? The great central midfielders of that club?
Slightly different characters, slightly different times in terms of agents and distractions.
Completely different Manchester United as well.
Different managers.
Those players felt fortunate to be part of Manchester United. It feels now like Manchester United are fortunate to have Paul Pogba. The dynamics have changed.
The best players didn't leave Manchester United in those days anyway. Nobody left because they were winning things all the time. Now they're in a situation where they're trying to get back to the top, and they keep. I totally agree with him. They've got to keep Pogba. If they have ambitions to get back to the top, he is one of the best players in the world. You don't sell the best players in the world if you're Manchester United.
Also, Manchester United, and this is a criticism that's invariably directed at the Glazers and to Woodward, is they're so commercially driven. And Pogba, you look at the figures. I mean, the game should be about the glory, but if you're the Glazers, you look at the amount of action that Pogba brings into the mega stores, and he is huge. His shirt sells around the world.
Will people be buying Dybala shirts if he signs for Manchester United? Is there an attraction for him to leave Juventus for Manchester United?
Well, what we know is he actually doesn't want to leave Juventus. That's not his choice. So already there's a little bit, if he does come, there will be that hanging concern that wasn't actually his first choice. Probably not completely sold on the destination, but it's the only viable alternative other than being frozen out at a club he loves. But yeah, he is an exciting player. Definitely world class. Still young enough. I don't think has gotten anywhere close to his ceiling yet. It's just at United, I feel, even with Pogba, it's all good having these amazing players, but you have to, like I said with Maguire as well, there has to be a platform for them to thrive. And there hasn't actually been that. In part because, as Henry says, the commercial element of things have always seemed to take precedence, recently. But if United can actually make things click, by the way, with all the things we're talking about, defensively and midfield, they still need to solidify. And if we expect Maguire to transform them, that needs to happen as well. He can't do it all on his own.
No, he can't. Just to finish off, actually, on Manchester United, Alexis Sanchez as well, is that a problem that Manchester United have got to resolve? He's
almost become an afterthought, Sanchez, which is interesting given that he's probably their highest earner, or the highest earner in the league. I mean, I'm not sure that it is. I think they've got other problems they need to solve more. I think they need to worry about getting players in. And I mean, just going back to Dybala briefly, the reality for United is now, why would somebody want to leave Juventus to come to Manchester United, realistically? Yeah, I think that's the only answer is money, unfortunately, because there's no Champions League. Why would a leading player want to come to Manchester United and pass up the chance of...
He's playing for a team that wins the title season, year after year.
Absolutely.
And goes deep into the Champions League too.
United have to, this is the hump that United have to get over now, is that they are one of the biggest clubs in the world still, obviously in terms of their standing, but in terms of the reality, are they going to finish top four again this season? They've got a real battle on their hands to get there. So I mean, I think that United is a hard sell.
But I like the way Solskjaer's doing it. The way he's sort of developing. He's clearly they need a director of football. But, Woodward has effectively done what Solskjaer wanted in terms of strengthening that defence. We can argue about the time it took, but Wan-Bissaka coming in, I think Wan-Bissaka will be fantastic for that. I mean, you know him far better than I do. I watched him at the under-21s and he was clearly distracted by the move. And a few Manchester United fans were going, oof, is he good enough? They clearly needed him. He's going to strengthen that team. Maguire will strengthen whoever plays alongside him, probably Lindelof. So, but yeah, Pogba's the huge issue they've got to sort out now.
Yeah, they do have to sort things out. Melissa, are they still regressing, or do you get the sense with these signings that they're making strides, that they're making the improvements, the advancements to challenge the top clubs, Manchester City being the obvious team, and of course Liverpool, the European champions?
I think the defensive signings have been really good. I still think there's too many unknowns about Manchester United, and the uncertainty when you're up against Manchester City and Liverpool, who are so certain in what they're doing. I just don't see the reduction in the gap between those clubs and United.
We love a bit of romance on this programme. I mean, we'll get to Frank Lampard and Chelsea in a moment, Melissa, but sympathy was in short supply from Maurizio Sarri on this programme for the majority of the season. We never got the opportunity to talk about them winning the Europa League in such emphatic fashion and margin against Arsenal. On reflection, when we look at the context, his body of work, just one season in English football in the Premier League with Chelsea, would we change our minds about him?
I think he was so unfairly treated. It felt like every game his job was on the line, yet he finished third. Comfortable, swaggering victory in the Europa League final. So a first major trophy, third place finish, which...
Bring him back.
Yeah. And then he's walked into a job at Juventus, like, you know, perennial champions, and who will go quite far in the Champions League as well. So clearly he's not as bad as what he was made out to be.
I don't think that was just the media, and his press conferences were a little bit dry. But I think it was the fans. I mean, sometimes the media takes their lead from the fans, and the Chelsea fans turned on him pretty quickly. And we remember the games, you know.
Manchester United was one,
some of the language about Sarri ball. Hudson-Odoi.
I mean, the Cardiff game, wasn't it, as well?
The Hudson-Odoi, the treatment of Hudson-Odoi when he was breaking through with England, playing well there. Chelsea want one of their own, fantastic talent, who was being wooed by Bayern Munich, probably still is. You know, fantastic player, and they wanted to see him being used. They wanted a little bit more sort of excitement. And Chelsea fans, when they turn on the manager, as Rafa Benitez found out, and he got to the Europa League final and won it that season, you know, they're not for turning. And I've got an element of sympathy with the Chelsea fans. They wanted to be entertained a bit more. They wanted, I know it's a long-running thing with Chelsea and their academy players, and Sarri just didn't engage. You know,
they were a tough watch. No matter
a tough crowd.
But they were a tough watch.
They were really tough to watch. Yeah. Yeah, so you can understand, you know, it's their team, it's Chelsea fans' team, you know, they want to be entertained.
They were tough to watch up to a point, but they finished third. I mean, you know, there are probably teams in that division that were tougher to watch, I imagine. I mean, you know, they had Eden Hazard, he's going to be a huge miss, obviously. It's a shame, I think, for our league that we haven't got Hazard, because he was one of the best players to watch. It was a bigger shame for Chelsea that he's not going to be there. Yeah,
absolutely. Dancing down that left wing, he is a superb player. But they do have Frank Lampard back, of course, who's one of the best players, if not the best player in Chelsea's history. How far will that take him? How much credit does he have for that? How long will that last, Ollie?
Well, I think it'll last a reasonable amount of time. I mean, as Henry said, there can be a tough crowd at Chelsea, as many football crowds can be. But so, I mean, he is one of the all-time greats. It won't protect him indefinitely there, but I think that it also probably, the transfer embargo in a way plays into his hand, is in his favour, because expectations will be slightly lowered. He won't have any new players to assimilate. He will probably be able to turn to youth a bit more for the first time in recent Chelsea history. So I think all those things will play in his favour. I think, you know, the most important thing is whether he has any ability as a manager, and he has already shown at Derby. I think you could call that a promising start at Derby, getting them to the playoff final. I thought he did a good job. Jody Morris, his assistant, knows the youth system there inside out. I think there are a lot of promising signs for Frank, and the esteem in which he's held, not just by the fans, but some of the players, I think will stand him in good stead.
He's a far more driven individual than sometimes he's given credit for, because everyone looks at Frank Lampard, photogenic, glamorous career, the things that he's won, but that's all rooted in hard work. That's all rooted in a kid who was pounding the streets of Romford in trainers, you know, just to get fit. Obviously got fantastic advice from his dad, Frank Lampard Senior, distinguished player. But you know, this was a kid who went and bought spikes so he could work on his shuttle runs. He's always been very driven. So you know, and he's got, as Ollie was saying, he's got very good people around him. I think it's quite an exciting time. If you're a Chelsea fan, to think, oh, Mason Mount, I'm going to see a bit of him this season. Tammy Abraham, sort of playing recently and scoring. So and I think he's got a long time I think the well of support for Frank Lampard in this current climate, with with the transfer ban, with an owner who is slightly distant at the moment and he doesn't really want to be going there and sort of getting rid of a manager every week, which Abramovich has done in the past. So I think Lampard will get a long time. Also, let's be honest, the media loves him.
Yeah.
I think they want a bit of permanence, Chelsea fans. I think there's maybe a little bit of tiredness with this drift. As Henry said, there's an uncertainty there because of Abramovich, and everybody knows what his situation is with the visa and the way he's become slightly estranged from Britain and from the club. He hasn't been as much. I think the Chelsea fans want to feel a sort of return to their roots, a connection. Exactly, they want a connection, and I think if Lampard can bring that can be, those things go an awfully long way. I mean, we talk about the way that perceptions damage Sarri probably more than they should have done. In the same way, they can benefit somebody like Lampard.
He's very close. Sorry, just on Ollie's point, he's very close to, or has huge respect from, the 3 or 4 Chelsea fans who are arguably their most influential. Mm-hmm. Every club obviously has sort of groups, particularly individuals, whether fanzine editors running podcasts, or, you see them being interviewed outside the stadium. And Lampard has always had the respect of those Chelsea fans. But, particularly, 1 or 2 of the fanzines, CFC UK, they've always supported Lampard's career from the start. I'm sure that, I know they're going to support him as manager. Yeah,
OK, I'm sure they will. They play their first game under Lampard next weekend, of course, at Manchester United at Old Trafford. Let's get on to Mauricio Pochettino, because you spent a lot of time with him last season, didn't you? Big interview with Pochettino. This week, just interested, Mauricio, in your thoughts on his comments when he said, he was asked about the club's transfer policy, the lack of or the perception, the lack of signings. They reached the Champions League final last season. Why aren't they spending huge amounts of cash to improve their team? And he said, well, I'm only the coach. Maybe they should rename me. I'm just the coach. That's what I am. I'm not the manager. If you want to know about transfers, he kicked the question upstairs and said, ask Daniel Levy. What was your interpretation of those comments?
I think it's twofold. I think it's frustration, obviously, that they've not done enough. I mean, the players Spurs have been linked with have been multiple and all of high quality, and yet they've only managed to bring Bale in as a big signing, and that's after 2 years of doing hardly anything. First player since Lucas Moura to arrive for the first team immediately. So there's the frustration element of things. And then there's also, I think, the fact that he will be held up against Guardiola and Klopp. Those are his 2 biggest rivals at the moment, or the 2 managers he'll be most compared with. They work under a completely different structure. Pep's hands are all over that City squad and all over City structure, as is Jurgen Klopp's at Liverpool. Pochettino doesn't have that. You can see his influence on that squad as a coach. Tottenham are where they are, and how we view Tottenham now as a club, where we assume that they should be a title contender and they should be pushing constantly for trophies, is because of the development work he's done. Daniel Levy's done obviously a remarkable job in making them sustainable. The stadium, which is, I think, probably the benchmark now in European football. But for them to get to that next level, for them to properly live with City and Liverpool, they had to invest better in the squad. And investing doesn't always mean big sums. It means correcting your weaknesses. And I still think that they haven't really done that.
Let's have a chat about Steve Bruce and Newcastle as well. It's another change this summer. One at Chelsea, of course, Pochettino staying at Spurs. But the big change at Newcastle, Henry, Benitez leaving first, and his successor, Steve Bruce, who got I thought, a pretty decent reception at St James's Park yesterday from Newcastle supporters, considering who they'd just lost.
Yeah, I mean, he's a genuine guy, decent manager. But this all comes back to Ashley. This all comes back to Mike Ashley. Is he going to sell the club? His relationship with Benitez, what a waste that is. I mean, I think on twofold. First, Benitez going to China. Look, he may come back soon, but that is such a waste for English football, for Champions League football, wherever he'd gone in Europe, he would have attracted one of the top clubs because he's an outstanding coach. I think it's a shame also for, I mean, the fans. The fans must be just going absolutely mad up there, and I have complete sympathy with them. You know, they lost Rondon as well. I know he's only on loan from West Brom, but you could see he wanted to play for Benitez, and that would have been a good partnership, you know, at Newcastle United. And obviously he's now gone to play for him out in China. So it's just, I just don't. We've all met Mike Ashley. I had 3 minutes in his company once and absolutely no eye contact, but there was the strategic mind. There were three major issues of the day. I can't remember what it was. It was like sort of wages or transfers or whatever. And it was like a Rubik's Cube. It was like, you know, seeing a kid with sort of supple wrist doing a Rubik's Cube in 30 seconds, or you doing a crossword. You know, it was just immediate. And he just sort of deconstructed the issue and then put it back together and solved it. So, you know, we're not dealing with a stupid individual there. I just think maybe it's become personal between him and the Newcastle United fans, and I think everyone will be on the fan sides because they are, you know, they are real, genuine fans who want the best for their clubs. They're not expecting to win the Champions League. They're probably not even expecting to finish in the Champions League positions or push for the title. They just want to be entertained, to have a decent run in the cup, and to finish mid-table. They don't want a cold southern owner. And I think there's a huge issue there. And I just don't understand his tactics, because in a way, he's got an asset there. And I know his game plan in his business world is to go into the high street, buy distressed assets and build them up. But he seems to be doing the opposite at Newcastle United. He took a household name and he's actually damaging it. I mean, they probably should be worth 300 million, but actually the way he's behaving, they probably only get 250 million for them if he actually genuinely wants to sell. I just don't understand why such an intelligent individual is behaving like that.
Ollie, did Martin Samuel sat down with Mike Ashley a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? Big piece in the Mail.
Fascinating piece.
Yeah. Did that change the narrative at all around Mike Ashley, or did it simply Mike Ashley's interview, his words, not Martin's piece, but did Ashley's words just further antagonise Newcastle supporters?
I don't think it changed anything personally for Newcastle fans. I mean, I thought it was an excellent interview, and I thought. I mean,
what was beyond that? Then what was the purpose of it?
As journalists, you know, I think Martin did incredibly well to get it. That's, you know, the first thing.
Sure.
So it was a great get, and it was a really interesting interview. But I don't think it answered any questions for Newcastle fans in terms of Mike Ashley. I mean, look.
So why did Ashley sit down and do it? That's surely the purpose.
Well, yeah, I don't know, because he doesn't really seem to care too much what Newcastle fans think. I don't know. I don't know why
their figures were coming out, wasn't it? So maybe he wanted sort of. But it was a fascinating interview, and you could see why the reaction was completely splenetic from Newcastle United fans.
I think to me he exudes cynicism, Ashley, really, and I even see that in these repeated rumours about takeovers, which never seem to come to anything. They kind of buy people off for a while with a little bit of false hope. You know, Ashley to me is somebody who does just enough and to try and keep the side in the Premier League. It doesn't always work, unfortunately. There's no ambition there. It's as Henry was saying, you know, that a great club, Newcastle, incredibly passionate support, terrific supporters, and yet, you know, they're just being taken for a ride, I think, by Ashley. And you know, you look at things like, so okay, they've spent quite a lot of money in the last couple of weeks. Joelinton was however much, but they've sold Perez, who's one of their best players. As Henry says, Rondon's gone. You know, so they sold Perez for, what was it, 30 million to Leicester? Why are Newcastle selling one of their best players to Leicester? I mean, Leicester, I think we all think around this time, Leicester are going to have a good season. Newcastle should be blowing Leicester out of the water, a club their size. That's no disrespect to Leicester. Leicester have been punching above their weight spectacularly for a while now. Newcastle have been underachieving.
How difficult, Melissa, will it be for Steve Bruce to operate in this environment, in this habitat?
quite difficult, I think, because, you know, we talk about Newcastle supporters and I feel so sorry for them, because every time there's a little bit of positivity or something to give them encouragement, as Rafa was, they lose it. So even now there's, you know, signings that they can be excited about, but I'm sure there's that asterisk there that they're all thinking, yeah, we've got that, but we've still got all this to deal with. And everything for them seems to be so short-lived in terms of hope and enthusiasm, and football is supposed to be the thing you go, you know, to escape all your problems from, to give you a little bit of joy. And for them, it seems like football is probably one of the biggest problems they have at the moment.
Yeah. Welcome back with us this morning, Ollie Holt, Melissa Reddy and Henry Winter. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. Sunday People, Black Friday, Jurgen Klopp in action this afternoon, Liverpool against Manchester City in the Community Shield. And then again on Friday night, the Premier League season opener. But Klopp not happy that they're playing on Friday night at Manchester United. Their first game next weekend against Chelsea. Back of the Sunday Mirror, though, it's all about United. No respect, no control, United. This is Paul Ince talking about the club's transfer policy. We talked about United in part one. Graham Souness saying Monster Crunch pair are part of the problem at Manchester United. He's talking about Paul Pogba and Romelu Lukaku. Lukaku will probably get his way and get a move away from Old Trafford this week. May not be so hopeful for Paul Pogba, though. Transfer deadline 5 o'clock on Thursday. Suns goals pull out, back to reality. The EFL started this weekend, started on Friday night, of course, with Luton. Saturday in the Championship, Scott Parker beaten yesterday as the Fulham manager. Neil Warnock at Cardiff beaten at Wigan yesterday. But the subject we're coming on to right now, Paul Jiggins' column this morning in The Sun. It's time to stop playing around Gareth. He's talking about Gareth Bale this morning, and David Walsh's column in the Sunday Times. If Gareth Bale was to sit out at Real Madrid and collect his £600,000 a week, it would be to betray the kid who lived to play football. David Walsh interviewed him many years ago as he was coming through the ranks as a Wales junior. Southampton, of course, an exceptional career with Tottenham, and on to Real Madrid, where he's had success. But he's not playing at the moment, Melissa. He's out of the team, and Zinedine Zidane has made it pretty clear he's not going to play again. What should Bale do here? Stick it out, or should he move on?
Well, he wanted to move on. That's been denied to him. So I suppose the only option now is to stick it out. For him, the China move made sense because I think they're the only people that can afford him, or the only place he could go that could, you know, assume his wages. And it's quite sad because Gareth Bale's an explosive, decisive player. And unfortunately for him, I think his two biggest crimes at Real Madrid was that he wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo, and that he likes to play golf or is different to the rest of the squad, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just because you're a footballer doesn't mean you only have to love football. And I think for anyone to assume that he's not dedicated to his craft because he likes something else is completely ridiculous. I mean, the sacrifices he would have had to make all the way through his career to get to where he is speaks for itself. And I just think it's a shame, really. We knew the relationship with him and Zidane was never going to work out. It was actually quite apparent in Kiev, the Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid. Afterwards, you know, he was talking to quite a few people who passed on the message that he said, you know, he couldn't stomach Zidane, and vice versa. There was an atmosphere that's only gotten worse now. And it's so difficult to see how things progress in any way because of how public it's all been. I don't think Zidane's handled it very well in that regard. But I just think it's unfortunate because at the end of the day, a top quality footballer, you know, obviously had his issues with injury, but when he's on the pitch, he is, like I said, decisive and is brutal against opposition defenders.
I don't actually see what he's being criticised for, Neil. What's he being criticised for? What, because Zinedine Zidane wants him out? It's not his fault. You know, the last time I saw him being criticised, he's being criticised because he didn't go out late at night with the rest of the players. The first time I've seen a player being criticised for not going out late at night. I mean, usually we're slagging them off because they're stumbling out of a club at 2 a.m. What? Because
of course we were told this was cultural.
Well, yeah.
To go out later.
What? Because because he goes home to bed early and he's dedicated to his craft, he should be criticised.
What about the criticism that he doesn't speak Spanish? He's been there long enough, Ollie. Why hasn't he committed and learned the language?
Well,
and how relevant is that? When you go to live in somebody else's country?
I think that's not ideal, and unfortunately, that can be a bit of a British disease. I mean, Ian Rush famously didn't learn Italian when he went to Juventus. You know, it's the British generally, and this is a generalisation, are a bit lazy about learning language. Obviously, Gary Lineker became fluent in Spanish. Michael Robinson, when he went, you know, there are lots of exceptions to that.
Aaron Ramsey, more pertinently, a Welsh player, he did part of his press conference in Italian.
I don't think it necessarily makes him a bad person, though. I mean, you know, or makes him, or opens him up to massive. You know,
it's a mistake,
John
though, Wally.
It's a mistake.
If you're going to go and live somewhere for any amount of time, you learn the language.
I agree. I think that's probably been his
You've got
misstep.
to immerse yourself.
But everything else, I mean, the fact that he doesn't do what the rest of the squad, he is who he is. They signed Gareth Bale as he is. He wasn't suddenly going to change. The language issue, 100% completely. I think, you know, like I said, he's not Cristiano Ronaldo. The idea with him was he was coming because Ronaldo was aging and he was going to replace Ronaldo. But Ronaldo replaced Ronaldo. He evolved and he stayed at the peak of his game, which then, you know, sort of lessened Gareth Bale's influence or powers or the need to have him even.
Maybe he found it hard to learn the language. Do you not think that if we say
you're not going to start testing me on language skills?
In this country, if we criticise foreign players for not speaking English, I don't think that would play particularly well. Why are we criticising Gareth Bale for? You know, what we're judging him is sort of Castilian accent or something. I mean, we're judging him on what he does on the football pitch, not on his linguistic abilities. And as far as I can see, he's been a pretty special player for Real Madrid. I mean, he's scored a couple of decent goals in Champions League finals, which is more than a lot of
How long would we wait for Sergio Aguero to speak English or to do an interview in English? And no one held that against Sergio Aguero because he is a phenomenal footballer.
No, but as far as I'm aware, year one you get at Real Madrid, and if you don't speak Spanish, you get a free year. And this is under Ronaldo. This is when Ronaldo ruled the roost in that dressing room. Year one, if you don't speak Spanish, okay. But year two, you turn up, first day of pre-season training, you need to have learned the language. Them's the rules, if you like.
Well, that seems slightly arbitrary to me.
But also, Ollie, you have to
stop a training. Philosophy.
Yeah, you have to stop a training session for the English guy. Well, for the Welsh guy, to be able to speak English to him. You have to every time you want to point out a tactical manoeuvre or what you want him to do. You actually have to stop the training session.
Yeah, look, it's a mistake, but Ollie is essentially right. We should also be judging him on what he's contributed on the pitch. And I was amazed.
Phenomenal,
I was amazed on two levels that Zidane, who's always seemed to sort of, well, apart from the headbutt in the World Cup final, has actually seemed a sort of fairly sort of measured, intelligent individual, should be so disrespectful about a player who's contributed so much to Real Madrid's history. And also, he's effectively destroyed any chance they've got of getting a transfer fee because he's told the world, we want this player out. So Bale's in an interesting situation. I don't like all these golfers versus footballer headlines because he's a fabulous footballer. Let's focus on that. But also, does he then go and sit it out? He might say, sit down. If you have a difficult start to the season, you're going to be bombed out for it. We know what the even with your reputation here. So what does Bale do? I mean, Melissa's point earlier about the money. Personally, and this is a fan looking at it, I think you go for the glory. Because wherever he goes, he is going to get well paid, whether it's £400,000 a week or the $600,000 that he's supposedly on at the moment. I think maybe he does have to take a cut and go and play, and he's got to play regularly because this, for him, he's done it at club level. What he could do for Wales, they are in a very difficult position in their qualifying group for the Euros next year. They need Gareth Bale fit, firing, sharp, playing competitively at a good level every week to drive them to the Euros. The Euros, obviously, in England. So for a Welsh kid who obviously spent a lot of time growing up in London, the semi-finals, we see, Wembley, we saw what he did for Wales in France at the last Euros. And I think it would be such a pity if this all drags on through the season. Wales don't have a Gareth Bale at 100%. He wasn't actually, I don't think from reports he was at his best in his last performance for Wales. He needs to be absolutely flying. He needs to be doing it at a club level. So maybe if he goes to China in 1 year, 2 years' time, he's still young, in pretty much young in footballing terms. He looks after himself. Ollie's completely right. We don't hear anything of him stumbling out of nightclubs. He's a model professional. But just, he needs to play.
What options does he have, though? There are no European...
Yeah.
I think he would consider taking the cut, but if there is actually no option to take the cut, then that's another issue.
But, I mean, he may have to go on loan, but with, as you say, a pretty substantial reduction. He needs to play. It needs to be about driving Wales on and also his own legacy.
Yeah, but Melissa's right. It's easy to say that, but what are his options? I mean, the one option he had, which he was going to take to play China, whatever you think of the Chinese league, he was going to go there. I mean, I've not heard that he's turned down offers. Have you? I mean...
No.
No. So... Well, you just pluck an offer out of thin air. You can't just pluck an offer out of thin air, can you? I mean,
but if the wages were at a sensible level, if there is such a thing in modern football, then you could see 1 or 2 Premier League clubs being interested in a talent like him.
We would certainly like to see him.
do it though if he had.
It'd be brilliant to see him back at Tottenham. You could see him at Manchester United.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's what United need, but
well, they've gone the Daniel
given what he's
James
done in his career, we'd like to see him
playing
first team football again, and we'd love to see him in the Premier League.
But he's not being depicted properly with some of these headlines coming out of Spain. He's not arrogant. I mean, you talk to people around the Welsh camp, you talk to people who played with him at Spurs, and they all talk about, Southampton, a nice, grounded kid. So these golfer versus footballer headlines are brutal.
He's different, and there's nothing wrong with being different.
Yeah,
no. OK, Premier League action, of course, starts on Friday night. Liverpool playing newly promoted Norwich City. Just want to ask everybody on the table who they think has done the best business over the summer in the transfer market so far, because, of course, the deadline Thursday night, Ollie, out at 5 p.m. But so far, has anyone struck you and thought, with the signings that they've made, that they are prepared and ready for the season, for the long slog ahead?
Well, going back to our favourite upwardly mobile team, I think Leicester.
Yeah.
Leicester have done some good business. I think getting Tielemans permanently is a huge thing for them. Perez is a good player. If they get Lewis Dunk in, I suppose, which we expect them to do, that's good. Villa, I think, would be the other one. I'd say. I mean, I think the buyer that's caught my eye the most so far is Tom Heaton. I think he was I think he's a terrific player. Good character again. I think he's what Villa needed as well. And I think Tyrone Mings, I was incredibly impressed with him last season. And I think when he was at Villa on loan, and I think to have made that permanent is a big thing for them. And I think Villa, it's difficult for clubs who come up, as we all know. But I think Villa have got the kind of momentum that you think that they might have a half-decent season. Yeah, they certainly want a half-decent season. They're certainly very, very ambitious under Christian Purslow at Aston Villa. There are some signings, you just forget people have made them. Christian Pulisic at Chelsea, because they announced that signing so long ago. Rodri at Manchester City, who was signed from Atletico Madrid, who've got their ambitions of their own to reach a Champions League final under Simeone. But for you, Melissa, which team is prepared, outside of the obvious clubs that we talked about, Manchester United, of course, but outside of the obvious? Leicester were going to be my shout as well, because I think it's 2 very good pieces of business. I expect them as well to get Lewis Duncan, who I think will be a good Harry Maguire replacement, will suit what they need. The fact that they've not done any mad distances during pre-season, so stayed, and Brendan Rodgers would have drilled them properly. They've got such good balance in that team. You look all the way through it and you're like, player, player, player. So I think they're going to be quite a handful and definitely pushing top 6 this season. I always think it's a good sign when clubs have to do minimal business, because it shows they're in good shape already. So I think the platform they've got to work with is excellent, and I'm really excited to see what they do this season. But it was a very deliberate strategy to reduce their carbon footprint, was it, Leicester City, in terms of their pre-season? Yeah. I completely echo that on Leicester. I went to see Andy King
last week, and he was talking about the amazing crop of young players. Some brought in, some sort of developed.
Are they going to win this thing? It's Leicester around this table.
Yeah,
it's not 2015, 16.
Yeah, no, I think they will absolutely push for the top six. I agree with Ollie on Tom Heaton.
No pressure,
I think he's well. Brendan likes pressure. He's a good manager, so he'll absolutely relish that. And he, I think, could see. Everyone said, "Oh, you're leaving Celtic, Champions League and all that." I think he could see Leicester's potential to go again, and his man management skills as well as the recruitment of the club, as Melissa outlined, I think that's a pretty strong combination. But coming back to Tom Heaton, is exactly what they need. I think he's obviously an outstanding goalkeeper, England international. I think he's a leader, he's a character. The fact that he's on the PFA management committee shows how respected he is by his peers. So I find Arsenal, as ever, fascinating in the transfer market. I mean, attacking-wise, they're going to be fantastic. I mean, that front four is just going to be sensational with Pepe coming in, cutting in off the flank. If they can get Tierney in this week by Thursday from Celtic, they're going to, if they have to go up to 30 million, they're crying out for a left-back. They're crying out for a centre-half as well. That is their main issue. I mean, this transfer budget, which everyone says is actually quite small, and the Pepe deal has been sort of spread out, but I'm sure Kroenke realises, the fans, they sent that message to him, "We care, do you?" That you've got a manager in Emery who's a terrific manager, so invest in defence. He's a really intelligent manager. He'll have seen the problems in defence. None of those defenders would get anywhere near the defences of the top three, possibly top four. So they need it. They're crying out for a centre half. So I think actually if Arsenal can get in a really good centre half this week, which is 50-50, and if they land Tierney as well, then they would have had the best transfer window.
We talked about these players destabilising clubs, but how much of an effect the Koscielny situation have on them going into the season?
Yeah, that's obviously not helpful. I think it was unexpected as well. You wouldn't put Koscielny down as the type of player to cause a stir. And yeah, Arsenal, totally agree with Henry. Only City and Liverpool have outscored Arsenal in the last 2 league seasons, but they've conceded 51 goals and 51 goals. So their issue is actually not in attack, because even with the addition of Pepe, I still think City and Liverpool outscore them. So, you have to focus on the other area where you're weak. I think Pepe helps them because he's direct. They lost a lot of their unpredictability and their threat to really, isolate a defender and put pressure on the opposition, that fear factor. But, for them to spend £72 million on an area when they've not strengthened the most pressing concern is a little bit of an issue. So, but if they get their defence sorted, I agree. I think Emery's a really good coach. Then you're thinking they should be, well placed to secure a top 4 finish.
Any other clubs, Ollie? Wilfried Zaha, of course, Crystal Palace, linked with Arsenal. Arsenal made a bid for him. Everton as well. Would you expect him to get away from Palace this week?
Well, I mean, I think if we're then looking at in the other direction about which clubs would you be slightly concerned about, I mean, I think again you would know more about this than me. I'd be slightly concerned if I was a Palace fan.
They lost 4-0 yesterday at home to Hertha Berlin.
Yeah, well, and particularly in the same way that we were talking about Pogba and the uncertainty that is bringing. There seems to be all this uncertainty about Zaha. He's so crucial to them. I'd be a little bit worried about that. I'd be a little bit worried if I was a Brighton fan, I think. I just, I know, the Potter's a good manager, first time in the Premier League. I just got the impression they were on the slide. They've been on the slide a little bit, so I'd be a little bit worried if I was them.
We are all and perhaps too often all about the names and the glamour and the glitz on this programme. And I was going to suggest him actually talking about Scott Parker beaten yesterday with Fulham, Neil Warnock, Cardiff lost at Wigan. But actually I think we should probably reflect on events at Bury, Gig Lane, because of course their first game postponed, their next game already postponed. Bolton Wanderers as well, losing at Wycombe Wanderers yesterday. And I guess for Bolton Wanderers fans, it's not about the defeat, it's about what is actually happening to their football clubs. Can we just get a sense of perspective on Bury and Bolton, what they will mean to their respective communities, and what this says about the perils and the pitfalls of playing football at a lower level in Football League.
Well, first credit to the Bolton fans who went there, sang their hearts out. I mean, I think about 1,300 of them went. I mean, you know, it is crazy, and it's, you know, we could have this on every single programme, probably on every single day. The issues with owners in this country, the wrong owners getting hold of these great English sporting institutions, let alone footballing institutions. You know, you look at the history of Bolton Wanderers in particular, Bury. You know, you could probably name a lot of the Bees. I mean, Blackburn Rovers had it. Their owners seem to have calmed down a little bit and sort of gone back to basics. You look at what happened at Blackpool. Only now have they escaped from the yoke of the Oystons. Morecambe. I mean,
owner who went AWOL.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Coventry, Sisu, a hedge fund. What are they doing running a football club? Well, I mean, you know, it's crazy. And, you know, I follow a few of the Coventry fans on Twitter, and a couple of them were tweeting from Edgbaston, you know, because they could not go and see Coventry City playing at St Andrews, so they went down the road to Edgbaston. I mean, it is crazy. And I think, in fairness to the EFL, if you know people at the EFL, they love football. You know, they don't. A lot of EFL staff do not support the leading teams. They support the teams who are, you know, in flames in the headlines. Debbie Jevons has come in, and apparently she's been working really hard and doing good things, particularly with Bolton. But how do you deal with a club like Bury and the owner like him, who whenever any action is made by the supporters or by the EFL, comes out with another toxic email? Look at what's happened at Charlton. I mean, Lee Bowyer did a brilliant job there, got them up, and within 48 hours there was an issue with Du Châtelet not giving him a contract. Now, fortunately, Roland has calmed down. But again, it's happening all over the country, and the governance of this great game in this country and these fantastic clubs, you know, the FA just sit back and go, oh, it's an EFL problem. But honestly, the FA have got to get involved. The EFL have got to be stronger. I think maybe now with one or two changes at the top of the organisation, with Sean Harvey moving on, I think they will be stronger, and I think they will get into clubs earlier, and they will call owners out earlier. And you look at the, you know, say Port Vale had an issue with Norman Smurthwaite, who was, you know, I mean, I went to see the new owner, Carol Shanahan, who's absolutely brilliant. You know, she's brought life back into the place. But she said the players there, League Two club, okay, it's not Premier League, it's not Champions League, but League Two players there, professional athletes, were being fed leftover pies. You know, I mean, this is like something out of Animal Farm. So, I mean, it is crazy. So football generally has got to be sharper on this. But fair play to the fans of Port Vale and all the clubs for fighting their corner, for the Charlton fans, for Blackpool fans, who were actually able to go back into the ground this week and take up places where they haven't been going for sort of 5 or 6 years because of the dreaded Oystons. The Oystons were staying on the game, not simply just on one club, and the EFL allowed them to turn it into a Wild West for too long. And football has got to be stronger. You know, we can talk about the Champions League and the Premier League and, as you say, all the glitz and glamour for an hour, but they are great clubs, community clubs all over the country who are being held to ransom by the wrong people. So the owners and directors, fit and proper persons, call it what you like, that has got to be stronger. And we cannot allow, I mean, Bury is ongoing. I mean, Bury could head to the wall. You know, and that is something. Bolton looks like they're going to be saved. But we've got to be strong on this as a media, and also as the EFL and the FA. The FA have got to get out there and start fighting these owners.
Agreed. Will we see Bury play again?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I desperately hope so. I think I agree wholeheartedly, actually, with everything Henry said about that. I mean, the lower leagues, to me, I started off supporting a team in the lower league, Stockport, and they've had their problems. And I know how much it means to that club, means to the community there. Henry and I both knew Neville very well, and his wife Jill, who have worked so long for Bury, and so I mean, the plight that they're in the moment is heartbreaking. I think we are getting to the point now. You know, these issues have existed for some time, but we're getting to the point where clubs are not fulfilling fixtures. Bolton didn't fulfil one of their fixtures at the end of last season. Bury's, first 2 games, as you say, have now been wiped out. I mean, this is getting to the point where we are starting to look at the disintegration of the 92, which for so long has been an absolute sort of shibboleth in English football. And you know, I again totally agree with Henry. We need to step up a bit. All of us, media, government, even Premier League. I mean, the Premier League. You know, I know the Premier League do pay money, but you know, it's all connected. The Premier League is a massive success story, but a lot of it funnels up from lower down. There's so many fans. You know, so many fans support Championship teams and lower league teams.
Sorry, just on Ollie's point, I think it was 20 of the 23 players who Gareth Southgate took to the World Cup, either on loan or were developed by EFL clubs. Yeah. And absolutely, we've got to support them. The Premier League have to give them more money.
Yeah. Support and protect, I think, would be fair to say. Wise words from Henry and Ollie on those clubs. OK, welcome back. Time for a bit of reflection now. Women's World Cup, which took place over the summer. What are your thoughts, having watched England play, having, of course, reached the World Cup semi-final? America, of course, USA went on to win it. What's the legacy of the tournament, do you think, Melissa?
I think there's a lot of positive strands to come out of it. One, that it was so well supported in the media, in terms of sponsorships. We saw Lucozade, for example, with the England team, you know, putting Nikita Paris on their bottles and stuff like that. It's important for young girls to know what's possible, and not only to see what's possible, but to see people, you know, excited by it and being properly involved in it. Like, it's not just the sideshow, it is the main event, and it was treated as such. Obviously, one of the offshoots is Stephanie, who ref the final, will be refereeing this Super Cup. You know, the usual reaction that you expect from social media on that announcement. But
it's funny you say that, Melissa. I got that. We all probably got the email at exactly the same time about that, and I actually just glanced and went, okay, and that was it. I just moved. I didn't actually think the hysterical reaction you've just mentioned that probably took place on social media. I didn't see it, but I just looked at it and thought, okay, fair enough. If she merits the Super Cup, let her get on with it. She's
been refereeing for ages now. She refereed a French top flight division game in April. I think the first woman to do so. But before that, she's done the Euro 2017 women's semi-finals. I think she did the under-19 women's in 2012, the final. So she's, you know, been officiating major tournaments before, and this just seems like a natural progression. That she's a woman is, you know, just part of the process. People feel that she's been given the opportunity because she's a woman. Actually, she's been denied the opportunity for so long because she's a woman. That's the actual fact of the matter. Yeah,
good for her though that she's going to referee the
and
Super
get
Cup.
more female referees in the Premier League. I mean, it will happen within sort of 2-3 years. Yeah, you know, we've seen it with assistants, but absolutely, because it's a quality thing. And
the showpiece of the Super Cup will presume,
absolutely,
hopefully people will say, well, why not?
Yeah, but I mean, the quality of men's refereeing in this country at the elite level, and is not great.
And they've got VAR to help.
And they've got VAR, but isn't that going to sort of dilute some of the quality because you're going to need more people in Stockley Park? So absolutely, I can see that. I mean, I agree with you. There was an element of she's good.
I'd love to see house prices in Stockley Park. The amount of times it gets a mention on this programme over the last sort of year or so. I mean, I wish I'd have bought there a year or so ago.
Anyway. I've got Heathrow next door. It's a bit noisy.
You
get your double glazing in first.
Another runway on the way. Ollie, you were at the Women's World Cup though. What are your feelings towards it? What are your abiding memories of that tournament?
Well, I went briefly to the last Women's World Cup in Canada, and the difference in the organisation and the way that the game was treated and the quality was startling, I think, in a good way. And in Canada, I went to see England play. They played in Moncton, and they played at a kind of out-of-town stadium that was all kind of temporary stands and things, double headers. In France, you know, they're playing in big stadiums in places like, you know, semi-final in Lyon, which was one of the sort of in many ways the headquarters of women's football. I suppose the best club team in women's football plays there, and the standard I thought was terrific. I mean, I went to the Parc des Princes to see France play USA in the quarter-final. It was the best women's, in terms of quality, it was the best women's game I've ever seen. And I mean, England did very well, you know, and even though we reached the semis last time too, I think there's been an improvement in our quality all the time. But the USA are still, I think the USA are still a step ahead, and they've got some terrific athletes. And Megan Rapinoe made a lot of headlines off the pitch, but she's also a terrific player. Rose Lavelle, Rose Lavelle just, I mean, they have got athletes. They are just terrific, great vision. Some of them, I love everything that Rapinoe stands for. And I think, again, if we're going back to what we're talking about the kind of stick and the reaction to the referee for the Super Cup, some of the reaction to Megan Rapinoe, mainly from men, I just found bizarre. I memean, I'm sorry, I'm not holding myself up as some sort of new man, but why do so many men feel threatened by women's football? It's, you know, I guess it's been happening for a long time, and I think, unfortunately, it's kind of like, live with it. It's here. It's getting better all the time. The players have, you know, there are some fantastic matches. I hope that the WSL will improve again this season. I think there's going to be, you know, crowds are going to go up. Standards going up all the time. There's a lot to like.
Yeah. And the Premier League clubs have embraced it, which is great. That actually a lot of these games, you know, like the Manchester Derby, are being played at the Etihad. Yeah.
OK, we need to just have a quick mention, because we're running out of time. Community Shield this afternoon. Liverpool, of course, playing against Manchester City. Let's just talk briefly. Jurgen Klopp as the European champions. How does he regard this fixture?
As a friendly and a little bit of an irritation, I think, before the season starts, especially since it's against Liverpool's biggest rivals. And, you know, these two, again, are going to be the two. And everyone is going to try and claw to keep up with them, or to try and at least not let the gap be 25 points. But I think it's so difficult to live with the City side. 198 points over 2 seasons is phenomenal, and they show no signs of abating. And that steeps down from Guardiola. He's so relentless, which means they will continue as you expect them to do. Liverpool 97 points last season was something, and to miss out on the title after that is you know, quite disappointing. They see the ability for themselves to improve in terms of development. Everyone, you know, a year along, the fact that they've won a first major trophy, the big one. So the players will be motivated by that. But it's still a very difficult task to overhaul City.
Yeah, it certainly will be. But a big game this afternoon. Nevertheless, it is the Community Shield. It is Liverpool against Manchester City this afternoon. OK, we've run out of time. We've had lots to fit in this morning. Thanks very much for your company. The first Sunday supplement of the season. Thanks to Ollie. Thanks to Melissa, and thanks to Henry. We'll see you again very soon. You can catch up with the show. It's also on demand. We're back next weekend. We'll see you at 10 o'clock. We'll see you then. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.